Welcome back. Today we conclude our conversation with the creative genius behind the game Pictionary, newly launched author Rob Angel, and the dynamic duo Rebecca Bleu and Nick Cravotta from Blue Matter Games. Okay, recently we've been hearing from scientists and physicians, I think about Vivek Murthy, the former Surgeon General of the United States. We are wired, they say, for social connectivity. Yet loneliness and isolation have permeated our communities. In fact, in the UK, the government has officially declared that the nation suffers from a loneliness epidemic. How do games, art, and words help heal that epidemic, Rob?
Bottom line, games are inclusive, games are fun. And when you're involved in one, whether it's drawing, whether it's Rebecca and Nick's games, whatever the subject matter is, you just feel connected. You have fun. Your guard comes down. And games are just play, whatever that looks like. You can turn off your brain, even if it's a strategy game. You really kind of just turn off your brain and immersed in the moment and with whoever you're playing with.
Nick or Rebecca, what do you think?
One thing I like about games is that the word is, the difference between play and work. It's all about your headspace. I mean, to play baseball is a lot of work. To play football, you're going to get more beat up than, studying a book or working at a computer. So it's really about where is your head at. And the word games is a very wide word. It can be, most people think of games as being competitive. I like the word contest, which is usually applied to animals. And today I was watching my big dog, 45 pounds, playing with my little dog, 17 pounds. Now the big dog can, Pepper, the big dog can totally overwhelm Blossom.
Put her head in her mouth.
Put her whole head in. But here's what happens, is that Pepper lays down, gets on her back, and puts herself in a position where it's about the contest. It's about the interaction together. Now, when one of them bites too hard, the other reacts, and they make sure they have a feedback system. But it's really about, we want to have fun together, and what does it take for us to be in that space together to have fun? And games provide a simple means for having that fun together, having that interaction together, where we know what to do. So we're not just watching a movie and then not talking about it, or just eating and not talking. It gives us another tool to be with each other.
I think it's important too, that feedback loop. I think when you look at the like animal nature and that sort of thing, that oftentimes I talk to people and we have friends who are like, oh, games, I don't like to play games. And usually the friends who are like that had children, that they let their kids pick the game, and it was usually some really bad Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game or something like that. And they felt like they had to play the game that their kid picked. And yet, by the time their kids got older, they ended up not liking games. And so what it is I think there's an importance to, giving the feedback of what kind of games and sharing the games that you love with the people that are around you as well.
I really appreciate that idea of feedback as well.
Well, there's another element to this and it goes back to that authenticity, is that games give me an opportunity to be myself, but they also give me an opportunity to experiment being somebody else. So one of my favorite game companies, Smirk and Dagger, makes games. The tagline is, sometimes it's fun to stab your friends in the back. And these are games about take that. It's about lying to each other. It's about being mean and being sneaky, and not being mean, but being sneaky. But
now you have to be laughing at the
But you're laughing the entire time, and you know it's coming. So there's a way to test out and play in that space that I would never stab a friend in the back, but Kurt's games give me an opportunity to play in that space and to explore another aspect of myself. And feed that aspect and then let it go, or to grow that aspect. I can do a cooperative game and realize I really like working with other people, and I get to practice that. I can practice being quiet. I can practice being forceful and being a leader. I can practice being support. It allows us to try all these different roles to learn more about ourselves and just
interaction socially with others. Yeah.
In different ways.
Yeah, that's so important. And, Rob, you mentioned something earlier about trying to get the pencil in someone's hand, and an important piece to your game. How can we provide some practical ways to help lonely people in this epidemic? How can we get them involved in a game? You mentioned it a little bit with your pivot, but talk to us a little bit about maybe some practical ways to reduce some of those feelings of isolation and disconnection, Rob.
I think one way is to not overthink it, in that if you're feeling that way, and I have gone through it, we all have gone through it. And when you're feeling that way, don't beat yourself up for it. I'll just say I had to get out of the closed loop of, what have I done wrong? And I have no friends and all these things. But one, it's okay. It will be okay, but it's also okay to feel that way. And two, take little steps to change your attitude and your position and what you're doing. It's really difficult to just one day, and they tell you on all these videos to say, okay, just wake up and walk around and say you're going to feel better and you're going to be better. It doesn't work that way. For me, it did not work that way. I had to take little steps, maybe even just for Pictionary, maybe just do one drawing one afternoon. Have fun with that. What the heck? You don't have to play a whole game. You don't have to really change your life. But then the next day, do 2 drawings. And the next day, maybe show one of those drawings to somebody. So take those little steps. Nothing's going to happen overnight. Human mind doesn't work that way, in my opinion. But it does take little steps and those little victories. So I would always counsel, whether it's a new business, whether it's your mental health, whatever it is, just start taking little steps, and they all add up to the big steps that you really need to take.
Wow, I so appreciate that concept of getting out of the closed loop, and taking that one little step and participating. We've talked about being on our last episode, being a spectator versus a participant, and taking those little steps as a participant might be the next right thing to do as you're moving out of that feeling of isolation. So thanks, Robert. I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, even if your next step is standing at the bottom of the escalator in Seattle with a pencil, right?
Yeah.
And a drawing.
Goodness, I had all the answers before I got started. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly how to make a game sell 1 million games. Yeah, not so much. That was, and I'll say it very quickly. When Pictionary got started, these little steps I'm talking about, I live them. This isn't just something I read. That when Pictionary got started, I had the idea, and I really didn't know how to start. And I was overwhelmed with all the thoughts of business plans and marketing plans and financing, all these things. And I didn't get started. I was overwhelmed in a negative self-talk. So I thought, okay, how can I break Pictionary down to its simplest task that I can do? It was the word list. So I got out a dictionary, a pad of paper, and a pen. I opened it up, and I wrote down the first word that made sense for the game. The word was aardvark. I wrote down the word aardvark, right? So I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a dream, but I wrote down the word aardvark. But guess what? By writing one simple word, I was no longer a waiter, because that was my job. That was the label. I told myself. So when I wrote down the word aardvark, I told myself, wait a minute, I'm a game inventor. That's my new label. That caused me to write a second word. I still hadn't created a game. I still hadn't had a marketing plan, but I got started. And the third and the fourth and the fifth word. So Pictionary started with the simple word aardvark. It did not start any other way. So you can start, you find your aardvark, I call it, and that's going to put you on whatever path you're looking for.
I was going to say, I also think something that's important as far as setting these things aside is freeing your mind from past experiences. And so just because yesterday you didn't like to draw or that sort of thing, it's like, if you can set that aside, you can move forward as well. So just kind of letting go of your past experiences and trying new things.
That's all fantastic advice. I mean, it's like I need to sit down with this and think about how can I apply this now in about 4 different areas of my life, right? I have a specific question for you, Rebecca, because I know you're into art as well as making games. And Wanted to find out from you, have you seen evidence that art can be a platform that connects people socially, thinking about shows and galleries, things like that?
Yeah, it's actually really funny that Rob brought up Burning Man, because Burning Man actually is an incredible example of socially connecting people through art. Nick and I have been going out to Burning Man for the last 24 years, and it's been really interesting to see the changes, but see the connection that people make, the connections we've made with our tribe of people. But what's really interesting also is to see how our role has changed and shifted. So at first when we went out, we felt completely connected with our group because we were working on large-scale art projects. And then we had a phase of our time going out there where we brought our children every other year. And so having a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and so on going out there and sharing the largeness of the art space out there and the community out there was pretty empowering. And then we have now stepped into a role. We go out and we do what's called rangering. So now what we do is we bring support to the next generation of artists who go out there and help people with having a great experience out there. So that's one real strong way of a social platform based on art. I find that art can start very small. As far as my community level, I've been part of a studio in town where artists come together. I've made migrational art circles where we have groups of people where we do collaborative arts that shift around in a circle. And then on a very much bigger picture that I've been seeing, it's really interesting to have, I'm really close with my niece and my daughter who put themselves out pretty strongly out in the digital world. And there are places like Redbubble where artists are able to post and sell their art and they gain a community. And it's really interesting to watch how this next generation is stepping into, it's not just that they're selling art, there's this kind of connectiveness. My daughter did a painting on her TikTok and she had somebody from New Zealand who wanted to buy that painting. And it wasn't necessarily that the person liked the artist and had a connection with the artist and was able to write back and forth. So they have a more integrated connection with art and the people behind the creators of the art. So it's been interesting, as I get older to watch all this happening, out in the world.
That's fascinating. I think that's so interesting, those connections. And who knew? Rob and Nick and Rebecca, you guys have all been going to the same event. Didn't know each other.
I guarantee you we were.
That's so good. Nick, you're also a teacher. What are some of the trends and implications you see as we think about social connections for students in the future? I know you mentioned the preschool games, but what are some other trends you're seeing?
So to put it in context, I was teaching at UC Berkeley for a while, and I had one of my courses was a 500-person class to teach programming. And I moved out of the area, and I was encouraged to move it into a distance learning course. So I actually got to witness I did one of the first distance learning courses there and see that transition from in-person to not being in person. And the very different connection that I had with my class, that when there were 500 people and I would jump on the desk because that's what you have to do to teach 500 people and keep their attention. But then suddenly being 130 miles away and not being able to be in the room with them. And I think COVID is really showing us another side of this reflection of college, of that it's not what we thought it was, and there's a lot of rethinking to do about college. I think the most important trend is going to be adaptation. The colleges have to adapt. I think they're in trouble because there's a whole group of people that are going to discover that they can learn outside the classroom. There's more than one way to learn. My daughter taught herself how to play piano using YouTube. She'd find somebody who was playing a song she wanted to learn, and then she'd watch where they were pushing the keys, and she eventually learned theory on her own, but she never had a formal class in how to play the piano. But we're taught that school is essential, that you have to go to school to learn. Well, if you're paying a lot for college and you're not getting that in-person experience, everybody knows that there's something missing right now. The students who have been forced to stay at home, they can sense that there's something missing by not being in the classroom. They don't quite know what it is.
And it's community, I would say.
I think it's community outside the classroom. I would argue no, in a 500-person class, you don't get to talk during class, right? So a lot of these classes are so big that there is no interaction. So there's an illusion of interaction. It takes place in your small group class, or it takes place with people that you know outside the classroom. So I think that one thing we're learning is that you actually don't need as much social interaction while you're learning something, or you can get it in a different way. Where the social part comes in is when you start using it. So once my daughter learned to play the piano, now she has another tool to interact with other people. She can express her ideas in a way with an expertise, with proficiency that she couldn't before. It's another way for her to be out in the world. Yeah, so I think that both people need to adapt. I've noticed that I'm in a men's group, and a lot of the guys don't feel as connected because we're doing it over Zoom. And my take is, well, that's what we have right now, so adapt to it. What can the Zoom experience give us that the in-person experience couldn't give us?
And maybe there's space for both.
And I found that out when my class was taught online. Students could stop me. I was teaching a coding class. They could read the code, take as long as they needed to understand the code. Whereas when it was in person, they didn't get to stop me. They didn't get to go back. They didn't get to look at the code. It was on a big screen. Both ways have their advantages and disadvantages. And I think that our world
needs to combine them.
Not just combine them, give more options. Is that there are plenty of people that don't need to be in a classroom to learn something. As adults, most of us don't have the time to go back to college. We figure it out on our own. We buy a couple of good books, find a friend or two to learn with, go online, and we become good.
Mm. Yeah, I had a piece of advice when I first went to college, and that was never let academics interfere with your college education. And I do think that a lot of it is the social connection and having that experience. And you're seeing this from graduating seniors in college and high school, this grief of not connecting to celebrate these things. And I do think that word adaptation that you shared, Nick, is going to be super important as we move forward.
Yeah.
So here on the Afterword, we have a signature question that we ask every week. And this is our question. And I'm really not going to pick one of you to start with, but kind of let it be a free-for-all. So whoever would like to jump in first. What is a metaphor to help us better understand the social element of games and their appeal? Anyone?
I've got an answer for you, Amy.
Great.
One of the tenets of our company, one of our slogans is that we're changing the world one rule at a time. And the idea behind that is that games teach us how to interact with each other. So we watch a lot of sports, a lot of games. There's one winner. And if you come in second place, it doesn't matter. There's one winner and everybody else is a loser. And you can see this come forth in, say, the business world, where I worked for a company on a magazine, and my publisher did fantastic. In a slumping market, he actually moved the company forward, but he didn't do it enough. So he wasn't in first place, and they let him go. It didn't matter what he actually achieved. There was this you have to be in first place. So our take is that we want to create games that teach people different ways of thinking. Cooperative games are leading to that, hey, we can all work together. Imagine, and to give an example, imagine a marketplace where it's not just about being first place and knocking all other companies out of business. What if a company focused on a market segment and just really met that segment's needs? And there wasn't stockholders who said, you have to increase your business 10% every year. If there were stockholders that said, you're the right size, you've met the need and you're doing it right. So games are a place where we can try out the world with a different set of rules to see how they work, to see how we work with each other. And I'll go as far as to say that games help us challenge our beliefs. Beliefs are really stories that we tell ourselves. And sometimes those beliefs are destructive, such as when we're raised in an abusive or an alcoholic household, and we need, letting go of those damaging, dysfunctional beliefs is super positive. What about if we can shape our beliefs to match where we are in our life and what we need?
Wow. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Rebecca?
I appreciate that.
I would say my metaphor would be that games are one of the only places that I feel like you can really show up authentically. It brings out your authentic self. And when you're in that play space, it's a place of discovery for one, but you can just come as who you are. There's no hiding behind some sort of polished part of yourself. It's like you're in there, you're in the game, and you're authentic.
Wow, that's beautiful. How about you, Rob?
No, I'm going to steal both of theirs. No, I think that, the beauty of games is that you get a do-over. You get to pivot after every game. My favorite game growing up was Risk. I loved world domination. I just wanted to. True. That was my deal. I thought it was fantastic. And guess what? If I didn't capture the world and didn't take over the world, that was okay because I knew tomorrow I'd play again and I had another shot at changing the world. The games weren't that dramatic. When they're going on, they're terribly dramatic. But when it's over, it's over. You wait for the next opportunity. So for me, games are just escapism. They're fun, but they let you do it over again and again until you get it right.
That is so good. These are amazing metaphors. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. We have special thanks to Rebecca Bleu, Nick Cravotta, and Rob Angel. And so before we go, Rob, would you please share with everyone again where we can find you and what's coming to the pike that we can all go and get?
That was a nice segue. You can get my book, Game Changer. If you go to Amazon, order it there. Game Changer Rob is what will show up. And you can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The Rob Angel.
Perfect. How about Nick and Rebecca? Where can we find you? And tell us about things that are coming down the pike that you have.
Well, we have our next generation of escape rooms. They literally come off the table. They're really quite extraordinary. We've got one coming out from Think Fun that'll be available on Amazon shortly called The Haunted Dollhouse, and it's being rated as the most difficult escape room to date. We also have a new line coming out from Play Monster called Break-In, which sort of takes the escape rooms and flips it on their head that you're breaking in instead of escaping. The first one, you can go to Break-In to Escape to find those out. The first one is an Alcatraz adventure where you're breaking into Alcatraz instead of trying to escape.
And we're excited because it follows almost exactly the actual historical facts. But this is what really happened.
But we have an alternative history about, you're the outside man helping them succeed. And then for our younger audience, we have something called Monster Mambo, which is it could be called a learning game, but it's a puzzle for our younger friends where you're building monsters. You have to use your memory, and the monsters dance when you're finished, and that's available from Brainwright.
Brainwright, yeah.
Hey, Nick, Rebecca, just small world stuff. We're over at Play Monster, Richard Gill. He came on board for Pictionary in 1987 or 8, and he was my business partner for about 15 years. And I saw you at the Toy Fair this year.
Nice.
Yes, he's a delight. That's his Catherine.
He's human. I love that guy. I love that guy for business, and he's one of my best friends.
That's fantastic. Amazing small world. And again, we're talking about social connections, and there's a nice element in that as well, finding your tribe. So good. Well, we have learned an awful lot here tonight. Thank you again to Rebecca Bleu, Nick Cravotta, Rob Angel joining us here at the Afterword table. While you are waiting for our next episode, we would love for you to become a subscriber. And you can go to theafterwordpodcast.com. You will find links to these guests' resources, and we would love for you to be a subscriber so you'll get caught up. And thank you again for this enlightening conversation. It was truly fun, and I am probably not ever going to think about the word art again in this. Thank you all for being with us at the Afterword. And as always, you are welcome at our table.